Hi everyone, it's Nadia, Jake, this is Babu, this is our buddy boy, and this is our Sidoni girl, and today we're going to be talking about Mad Max Fury Road, which was requested after we saw the last film, which was Mad Max Furiosa. So
that was Furiosa, a Mad Max saga.
That's right, thank you. Yeah, because Mad Max wasn't really there. It's my first time watching it. Jake watched it when it first came out.
2015, yep.
Yeah, so really it's been a while since you watched it as well. And
so we just kind of I wanted to see what you thought of it, basically seeing it as a sequel to Furiosa, because she hadn't seen any of the Mad Max movies before she saw Furiosa.
I am watching it like in a good timeline right now, because technically this movie is supposed to happen right after the prequel that just came out.
So I think these perspectives of when we saw them and how we saw them really informed our opinions of Furiosa, which you can go watch our review right now. You gave it, I believe, a 9 out of 10. I gave it like a 7 out of 10. I still really liked the movie.
8.
What?
I thought you were like an 8.
It's like a 7. I really liked the movie. I liked Furiosa, but it was very, 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 very interesting watching Mad Max Fury Road after that experience. So I'm so curious to know what you thought of Mad Max Fury Road.
Wow, it's such a different experience than the prequel that we just watched last week. I really loved, like you said, I rated it 9 out of 10. I really loved that film for XYZ reason that you can watch in that review. But this movie was really different in many ways, but also kind of, I didn't know why it was called Mad Max, first of all. Because
it's the franchise starts.
Yeah. But it felt like it was more Mad Furiosa, because she is really I understand why it's called Mad Max if Furiosa wasn't there, but it kind of felt like Furiosa was a little bit more mad than Max.
He's kind of the vessel for the stories to take place,
Yeah, which is why I'm surprised that it's titled after him.
It's branding.
Yeah, I think
franchise.
So. And
okay, what did you think? Tell me.
I would give it a 7.5 out of 10. So I liked it less than the prequel.
Okay.
And the reason why is because I think because the prequel was recently made, I just thought I actually like the CGI in the prequel. I know you don't like CGIs very much. I actually liked it.
I don't mind CGI. I mean, Avatar: The Way of Water. I love that movie. I love
you didn't like the CGI in Furiosa as much, I guess.
I thought it was distracting.
Yeah, I didn't think so at all. I thought it added. I like the way that Anya Taylor-Joy played Furiosa better than Charlize Theron, just because it felt it's different. It's different characteristics, right? Charlize did an amazing job as an actress here. It's just my preference was more of the way that the previous movie the characters played Furiosa, because
do you feel like it's partly just because that's the first one you saw, so that's what you're
maybe, but also because I liked the intensity of the prequel in her eyes, of how she was there was not a lot of it's almost like she had swallowed pain, turned it into strength, whereas Charlize's portrayal, you could see the pain very prominent in her eyes. And for this movie to take place right after the last film, a little bit of a break in character, which makes sense because this is the first one, really. That one is a prequel. So like I said, yes, I think you're right. It's because I watched the other one, but I love that intensity in Furiosa, and this one was intense too, but I did see more empathy and more sympathy with Furiosa, and maybe I'm just crazy, but I like the little ruthlessness that she had. She ripped off her own hands, and kind of you get the genesis of what happened. I also was disappointed with the plot line of this one overall, because without getting into spoiler, the first one leads you to believe that something is happening, right? There's a destination that they have to get to. This one, I'm expecting that destination. And so it kind of felt like it was a roundabout way of something that I expected to happen. And then it was just really? 2 movies leading up to this shit?
Okay, but you see why this expectation made me knock down Furiosa and dislike those aspects of Furiosa, because I know you're looking at it from this is basically a sequel to Furiosa to you. But in reality, this was a self-contained story.
I know,
and they put Furiosa before it, and that changed the perspective of. That's why I was watching Furiosa, going, "What is this with the group? Where are we headed in this direction?" It was a very frustrating watch, even though it's a pretty good movie. In my mind, nowhere even matches the kind of intensity and self-contained story structure of Mad Max Fury Road.
Well, Furiosa wasn't supposed to be a self-contained story, right? It's supposed to...
Says who? I thought, I mean...
It's not supposed to be 100% self-contained story. It's supposed to be a genesis of Furiosa and what made her...
I feel like they want it to be something that you can enjoy on its own, though. I feel like that's part of their
I think you can
impulse.
Enjoy it on...
I don't think they did. I don't think they succeeded, but I think that was their goal.
It was the first movie that I watched of the franchise, and it inspired me to watch this one, and I would watch other films in Mad Max series too because of that film. Now, I think that's what like a good movie's supposed to do, is like I would watch other movies in this franchise instead of feeling like, you know, sometimes you watch prequel and they really suck the life out of you from the original films, like Star Wars, you know, and you watch those prequels. And if I told you when I watched the prequel of Star Wars, I was like, had I watched the prequels first, I would have never watched the original Star Wars series, right? So I think there's a lot of respect that we have to give to Furiosa. However, I do understand what you're saying, because I'm judging it from this being like, okay, this is moving the second film. But really, in reality, like you said, this is the first film that came out self-contained, and then Furiosa came as a genesis of this film. So my criticism is coming from, okay, a linear timeline, right? Where I watch this one, then I watch the next one, and then whatever else, I'm following the timeline, you know? So my reaction and my information and the way that I critique things is informed by that. And it's just more of a preference, I think, for me. Like I said, like Charlize, like I thought she did a phenomenal job. I just happen to connect more now knowing where Furiosa came from and the genesis of her character. I happen to connect more to the way the character was portrayed in the prequel rather than this film, because it really explained where that strength came from. Whereas over here, I feel like they made the character intentionally weaker, even though she's not weak at all through her actions, so that Mad Max can have more of a protagonist, more of a like a lead scenario. Because I honestly felt like some of the scenes, Furiosa could have handled it, judging again from the prequel, and Mad Max was like more of a passenger that she was helping rather than like the...
I get where you're coming from. Like, I understand where you're coming from in terms of, like, feeling disappointed in character expectations and stuff. It's just so interesting because it's, like, almost, like, reverse engineered from, like, how these films were made. And it's so bizarre that, you know, this is kind of the result of doing prequels and this sort of storytelling, because, like, I just want to give some context first, because I'm not devoted to the Mad Max franchise in any way. I'm no fanboy. I saw it in 2015 when it came out, and I thought... it's a pretty good action movie. I wasn't talking about it like it was the best thing in the universe. And there are some people who will tell you that it's up there with the greatest films ever made. And I was just like, it's pretty good. Then I saw Furiosa, and I was like, Furiosa, that was fun. Like, it wasn't, it had a lot of, I thought it had a lot of structure problems, had some story problems. And then we rewatched Mad Max Fury Road. I get it now. I feel like after watching Mad Max Fury Road, especially after rewatching Furiosa, but given all this time since it came out, I watched it and went, I get why people are so obsessed with this movie. It is that good.
It is very good.
Mad Max Fury Road, it's like, it's such a perfectly built and structured screenplay. It's such a tightly done story that has great arcs for Mad Max, great arcs for Furiosa, and the way their relationship builds over the movie. It's so well done. The world building is subtle. It's not in your face. Honestly, watching it kind of made me think less of Furiosa. When I saw Furiosa, you're going, yeah, there's some great action stuff. There's all this good stuff. But then you watch Mad Max and you go, man, they basically did a very similar story, but without all this stuff that bogged it down, without all of this prequel baggage, without all of this these pacing issues. Furiosa, it's in what it started to look like to me was they made Mad Max Fury Road, and they had written and they had all these ideas about the world building and the lore. And this was kind of like an indulgent, Furiosa was like an indulgent lore dump. And that's cool if you're really into the story.
I was into that story.
That's great.
Yeah.
But I thought it was unnecessary. I thought, I don't really need to know more about how Gastown and Bullet Town work.
What do you think the prequel is about? What do you think the idea of a prequel is without like them explaining the background of all this
That's
stuff?
why, and I generally don't like prequels. So
But it's like you're criticizing something for exactly what it's like. You're criticizing a novel for being fiction.
But it's not a novel. Well, and that's part of it. It's almost like this novelistic.
And then why read the
type of
novel
story.
then? You know, right? Like when you're reading a romance novel, you're expecting.
I'd be fine if
romance.
I felt like the story of Furiosa was justified, but the main bulk of her story takes place in Mad Max Fury Road. The climax of the emotions of her character journey. Not to get into tons of spoilers with Furiosa, but that story starts out with her searching for the green plate. You know, she wants to return to the green place.
Yes.
That story doesn't get resolved until Mad Max Fury Road. And I remember when we talked about Furiosa, you were going, you know, what happened with that? Are we going to see? And that gets resolved in Fury Road. What we learn about Furiosa in Furiosa is basically that she grew up. She started out being a badass, tough little child who's thwarting the bad guys and is super gritty. And she just stays that way the whole movie. She's a tough badass. Where's her growth? Her growth doesn't happen. Her growth doesn't happen until Mad Max Fury Road. Yeah, she learns stuff about revenge, but I feel like she was basically the same little girl, the same girl who was a badass the whole movie in Furiosa. All of the good story stuff, all of the emotional impact doesn't hit until Mad Max Fury Road. So yes, if you want some lore, if you want some background, and also you want to see some more great action set pieces, which there are in Furiosa, that's cool. But it's extra.
I couldn't disagree with you more if I tried. Like everything you're saying, I don't even understand what makes you say those things, because it's just, I hear you, but I don't understand you.
Okay.
I have like no understanding of how you are coming to these conclusions at all.
Okay.
And I'm curious if you have that understanding, because I'm like, I'm listening, I'm hearing you, but I'm like, what the hell? Like, it's.
What is your issue? What is with what I'm saying? I mean, I feel like Mad Max Fury Road has the emotional.
First of all, I think this is becoming a review by Furiosa and Mad Max Fury Road, because.
Well, I just want to get out of the way because that's part of the dialogue now between these, because we have this prequel now. That's part of this broader story that we have to discuss because they're so tied together. I mean, the freaking credits of Furiosa is Mad Max Fury Road.
Well, yes, because it's basically saying that it's going to lead from that and then go into this, which I thought it was great marketing, because people like me wanted to watch, you know, they hadn't watched it yet, or maybe wanted to rewatch, like you, Mad Max Fury Road. And then since it's been a while since it's come out, but
how is it a better film to you?
I just have completely different perspective. There's so many things to address with what you said that I'm trying to understand. When you say that there's no character growth, there's no arc, I disagree with that. I actually agree with that with this film. I didn't think that there was much growth with Furiosa's character versus the last film, because she came from someone who I can't really review it without getting into spoilers and it being again a Furiosa review. But basically a summary of it is she comes from somewhere where her family's together intact, to watching people that she loves die in front of her, and brutally, and then going into a lot a rage fest, yes, but she gets so much setback that she has to learn just to navigate. She becomes more strategic. She learns about the mechanics of things, in the desert. She learns.
She becomes more of herself, but she doesn't.
She becomes more of herself because you're judging her from the prequel, from who she is here. But I don't know, watching the prequel and not watching the other films in the franchise, who she's supposed to become. And of course, she's supposed to become who she is in this film because it's a prequel. So we're literally seeing the journey of where she started.
That's why it felt unnecessary. That's why
it felt necessary because we don't know how she became who she became.
You don't need to see all that. It's intuitive.
I do.
It's the iceberg theory. We see
how
the tip.
Is it intuitive?
It's implied of where she came from.
How
and
is it
in the script? The screenplay of Mad Max Fury Road, it's implied in the screenplay. She says, yeah, she came from a place where there was all this stuff.
Saying it and seeing it is a different thing, right? You were able to see the journey. Yes. I didn't understand, we don't know about Chris Hemsworth's character and what a role he played and lost her arm in this film.
What does it add?
I can't argue with you. You and I have such a different perspective on this that we're just going to go in circles, because you and I have, it's you're seeing the sun and I'm seeing the moon, and it's like we're trying to argue why that's the moon and not the sun. It's like two different points, and
I just found a lot of it unnecessary. I thought it was a decent movie. I thought it was pretty good, and it's much better than most action movies coming out these days.
We're talking about Fury Road?
Furiosa. But compared to Mad Max Fury Road, it is just a very pale comparison, especially from a story structure, narrative structure. I didn't feel for any of the characters like I felt for Knox, the guy who's like obsessed with Immortan Joe in Fury Road. Nicholas Holt's character.
Yeah.
I felt nothing.
I liked him too.
I felt so much for that character on this rewatch that I didn't feel any of that for any of the characters. And he was like a side character, just a little character in Mad Max Fury Road. We see Mad Max go from so hardened and tough and just like shut off to the world that he's willing to abandon all these women in the desert to teaming up with him, for believing in something, for providing a plan and having some hope. We see Furiosa.
Okay, I do.
That's a real character arc that happens in the story. We see Furiosa go from someone who is tough and has a goal and a mission, confront the realities and the illusions of her world crashing down on her. We see her have to adjust and see her how to try to not escape from the problems of the world, but try to build something new. I mean, it's an inspiring story. It's really a beautiful story when you look at how the characters work in Mad Max Fury Road, and they have this character journey together. Mad Max, Charlize Theron, I think their character dynamic works so well because they play off of each other. They're both like, she starts out as the optimist, he's the hardened pessimist, and they kind of balance each other out, and especially at the end of the film, and they're able to build something together. The lore, the world building is really subtle, really visual, and you just get little flashes of what you need to know. Again, they're such different movies on a structural level because Furiosa is kind of playing like an epic. We're seeing her from her young days all the way up until right before this movie starts. But it doesn't matter if we literally spend more time with the character. It doesn't mean we're emotionally more invested with them just because we're watching them do stuff more. The real character journey doesn't happen until Fury Road, and it feels like Furiosa knows that and is trying to find ways around that because we have this character story with Dementis and it's like a revenge story, but it doesn't really result in any real change for her. I will get into this in spoilers, but the jump from Furiosa to Fury Road, where the Fury Road starts where she takes Immortan Joe's brides and escapes with them. That's how Fury Road starts. In what part of Furiosa? But what part of Furiosa? Like, why would she do that in Furiosa? There's nothing that really builds up to that pivotal moment where we're watching Fury Road and I was like, it seems like they know each other. It seems like they're all friends, I don't think there's any question. I think Fury Road has way better effects. I think it has better stunt choreography. It's just a better, tighter action film. Furiosa, I think it will be beloved, over time. I feel like it kind of has more of a cult status vibe, but every level, it just doesn't reach the heights of Fury Road.
Like I said, I couldn't disagree with you more.
But why? Then why? Why isn't it?
I already told you. All the points you're making is not great points in my.
Why are they? How am I wrong?
Because you're talking about character arc. Like there are points that I agree with you. Like Nicholas Holt's character, I really was not rooting for him in the beginning for obvious reasons, and then I really rooted for him at the end. I like the perspective that you gave about Mad Max because he comes from someone who's ruthless and brutal to gaining friendship, so there's an arc there. But that's unfair to compare those arcs to Furiosa because Furiosa is literally about one character, whereas this one you see multiple characters development. You see the brides, and how far they come.
There's other characters in Furiosa.
There is, but it's focused on Furiosa's gain, right? Whereas this one, it feels like more of an ensemble.
Why can't we care more about Praetorian Jack and about Dementis? I mean, they're big parts of that.
I guess I didn't care about their growth as much because they were just. When I watched the prequel, I was just focused on Furiosa. The movie, I felt like was made the way that it was for me to focus purely on Furiosa's character arc, and I was just invested in her. Whereas this film, I was not just invested in Max or Furiosa, I was invested in all the other characters. I was invested in the brides, I was invested in the people that they meet along the way, and I was invested in them as a team. I wanted them to succeed as a team, Whereas in the prequel, I wanted only Furiosa to succeed because And of course, like the other character, her romance that she later develops as well. The character arc of going from someone who is tough but doesn't understand the reality of what it means to be tough, because it's kind of like someone who learns karate, right, but has never been in a real life fight. That's the type of toughness that I thought Furiosa had in the beginning, where she knew how to fight. She was brave, but she was never in a real dire situation where she had to exercise those skills. Then she learned about trust, right? Like her mom said XYZ, and then she defied her mom because of her innocence, and then that innocence was taken. Then we go into revenge story where she is consistently, you know, taken down a notch just for her to like build herself back up, which she does flawlessly in my opinion. But and at the end, you know, the revenge is taken, but also it's a different type of revenge. It's a revenge where I don't know how to say this without getting into spoiler, but like, you know, something that her mom gave to her, she, instead of like taking it back home, she repurposes it to build a community like the one that she came there for. What makes her world the way that it was is because it was evergreen, right? There was fruits, there was food, there was sustenance that they didn't have to fight for, people didn't have to fight for. And that's what she, at the end, she tried, or at least I felt the movie hinted at her trying to build, right? And part of that included, I want to help people from going into, I want to just go home and I want to kill this MFs who, like, you know, put me here and made me go through all of this, to, yeah, I'm still gonna be revengeful, but it's gonna be a different way. It's gonna be in a way where I am going to help other people as well who are also underdogs. And that came from her character journey, where she was introduced to these other people, where she saw that there is the rich people who are able to live and drink water in abundance, but the poor who are fighting every single day to try to be alive. And I think that's the arc in the first film. The second film, or this film with Fury Road, you know, all of that stuff already happened in the prequel. So this one is just her helping get the bride. That's already established in the beginning, so there's really no real arc in that way, right? Because that's already in the beginning that she wants to help these girls escape that psychopath, and then it's just her getting there. Really, it's Max's character who suggests to her at the end something that I can't get into without getting a spoiler, that makes them pivot their directions of where they're going.
Well, let's talk spoilers for Fury Road.
We can talk spoiler. 3, 2, 1.
Spoilers for Mad Max Fury Road.
Yes. You know, when she goes into the world that she came from, she doesn't even realize that she passed it, because it's all like muddy and it's wasteland, until she meets people from her past. She realizes, oh my god, like there was a plague or whatever else, drought, and all the sustenance that her place was known for, all the peace and everything, there are barely any survivors left, and everything is gone that she knew from her childhood. So the idea of her going home never happens, because home is not there anymore. And that's what I meant earlier in the non-spoiler section, where it was a disappointment, because, and I do agree with you, like if I had watched this movie first, and the prequel really makes it sound like there is going to be a conclusive ending where she's going to be able to get back home and reunite with her childhood friends and all those things and multiple other people, but that's not happening. So it's a very unsatisfying ending for me in that sense. But so they head straight forward. And Max, where I agree with you, is the character arc of him finding friendship and actually wanting to believe in community rather than just himself, because survival skills, right? He just always had himself, and that's what a lot of people, these mindsets. So is Nicholas Holt's character. Like, you're basically trained to be a soldier and a survivor, and in that way, it's very ruthless mindset of what you have to do, put yourself through. And he suggests, let's go back in the direction that we know is more fruitful, and let's recreate that and actually help the people, right? That is not that much different than what Furiosa is trying to do from the very beginning, right? It's just he helps her pivot the way, instead of like when she is taken down a notch. Furiosa is going like this, and then because of the devastation of what happened to her hometown, she goes like this, and Max basically helps her go back into the same level, you know, that she was. It's like, no, let's, like, I actually agree with you. Let's become a community. Because so Furiosa helped Max as much as Max helps her realize, like, who she really is and what she like to have hope, because Max says hope will get you killed, but at the end hope is the one thing that he holds on to. I thought the action sequences was fine. I just preferred like the action sequence from the prequel.
I feel like the action is one of the most obvious downgrades in Furiosa. I feel like Mad Max Fury Road, it looks and feels way more tangible and practical. I don't know. I just get the sense that Furiosa used more CGI and
I like the visually. The reason why I like Furiosa is because visually I like the action sequences in Furiosa. So I actually think that CGI added to the film rather than take it away, which is obviously something you disagree with.
I felt like less physically present. I mean, Fury Road, I feel like the action holds up really well. I feel like I'm in danger.
Yeah, no, I didn't feel that way at all. I mean, I felt like I was in danger. Like I said, I think Fury Road has great action sequences. I'm not knocking it down. I just happen to like Furiosa's action sequences better, just because I was really invested in Furiosa as a person. So the action sequences that, like, I mean, come on, the way that, like, understanding what happened to her arm and then everything else that happened and how much she survives, and, you know, kind of like the whole building the big truck machine thing to, it's just you understand the bridge scene where, you know, she tries to kill Chris Hemsworth. I just really like those scenes a lot. You know, it was and I think
bigger in scale.
It was bigger in scale, and it wasn't just all oriented in the road. I think I like the idea of having like different sequences taken different areas rather than just all in one area. I think that's why I like that one.
It's better. More expansive. There's more terrain. There's more stuff going on, because even though it's a prequel, it acts kind of like a sequel, and it's like building on the action of Fury Road, which Fury Road has great action, but it is very much the road war. Just
exactly. And I don't like just it being in one place. I thought like the character development Nicholas Hoult was the best one, so that is something that you and I see eye to eye. But of course, at the end, he wanted to become a martyr, and I was like, okay, he was gonna die regardless, because he was like, I'm gonna need to kill myself one way or another. So,
but he goes from being like just a minion to being like a heroic.
He makes more active choices in the way that it truly matters to him, because before he accepts himself as a pawn, whereas at the end he is sacrificing himself that he found a greater meaning. He found love, he found friendship, he found a community, and he doesn't feel like he's a pawn where his life is only going to matter a little bit. It's more so less about the title and acknowledgement of a psychopath rather than, more watch me because I finally find a greater purpose that is worth sacrificing my life. Whereas he thought that it was worth sacrificing his life before, but it was more out of fear. And this one is more out of hope for the betterment of his peers, and I really appreciated that. I think one of the things that I didn't like about Furiosa's characters, I mean, obviously, if you're going to be realistic, she gets stabbed, she's bleeding, she keeps on going at the end. But man, when you see Furiosa and how like her arm's ripped out and she's still like, I can stand up all by myself. I didn't like the end where like Max had to help her stand up. Although like had I watched this movie by itself, I would have totally loved that. But I'm like, Furiosa is like such a badass that she doesn't like, I don't know, it felt like she was also leading into other characters.
Well, it almost feels like they're different logical worlds, because Fury Road is a lot more grounded, even though there's silly stuff. There's the guitar playing guy with the flamethrower.
Oh my god, yeah, I was going to talk about that.
It's great, but I feel like it's a lot more grounded in terms of like when people get hurt. Furiosa feels, and I don't know if you see this, but I got more of like an anime vibe where it's kind of like,
I felt like it was more supernatural, right? Like something
more surreal.
Yeah, because it's like Furiosa, I thought that she is who she is because of the genesis of where she came from. Like she's, whereas over here, I didn't see that. I was like, she seemed very equal to other characters who feel pain. Whereas in the Furiosa, I'm like, she's able to take all of this.
She's like a superhero.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the disconnect that I have with those two characters, And then the music and the guitar always playing, like that was really funny and just such a unnecessary, but also like added so much into the film that I thought it was interesting, especially at one of the scenes where like the guitar is just like everything is just flinging out and the guitar is the like last thing that we see as audience. And it's intact while everything else is broken, you know?
I feel like the humor really works well and it wasn't over the top.
I gave it a 9 out of 10 for a reason, and I give this a 7.5 out of 10 for a reason. You know, I think had I watched this by itself, I would have probably given it like a little bit higher rating. But again, you're listening to my review in the perspective that I watched Furiosa and I watched this in the timeline it's supposed to be. So obviously my review is due to that, and maybe I am biased, but you know, it is what it is, and you have a different perspective because you have a different perspective.
Agree to disagree. Yeah. I'm giving Mad Max Fury Road the coveted 10 out of 10.
Nuh-uh.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
Yeah. I mean, it's something that I feel excited to rewatch again. We just rewatched it. It's just the action sequences.
I would rewatch it too.
Every like concrete element just builds on itself, and it just works. It's like a perfect little contraption.
Yeah, I think it's a well-rounded film, and I do agree with you that Furiosa is not like completely well-rounded, but it's also not intended to be well-rounded because it's supposed to lead to this film. So I still give that one 9 out of 10, and then I give this one 7.5 out of 10. With that being said, I would rewatch both. And I really became a fan of the franchise because of Furiosa mainly, but also because of this film. So,
well, I'm glad you're watching them. And we should probably watch the originals at some point.
We should. I'm just disappointed that there's no Max or Furiosa.
No, Max is there, not Furiosa.
I really like Furiosa.
Well, let us know what you all think of Mad Max Fury Road and Furiosa if you've seen it already.
And I'm really, really curious who you agree with, because Jake and I have such different perspective right now that you know, it'll be interesting to always interesting and insightful to hear your comments about why you agree with whom for what reason. So
thank you for watching, and we'll talk to you later.
Bye.